4 panels. Thank you, Sarah. And Sarah will be our tech support, so please just message her in the chat if you need anything. And I'm your moderator today and your fellow author and editor of this book. We're quite excited about the completion, and Dr. Joe, will you hold it up? Dr. Joe seems to be the first one to actually have received a copy, so we're thrilled. So she's got it in her hand. So it must be real then, right? There's nothing virtual about this. So I'm just going to take about 1 minute to introduce a little bit about the book, and then I'm going to pass the floor to each of the authors for about a 2-minute introduction, and then we're going to open it up to all of us to have a nice lively discussion. So as I mentioned, I'm your moderator today, and I'm grateful to be on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen peoples here in beautiful Victoria, BC. I've had a bit of a cough, so if I mute, I'm just having a little bit of a cough. I guess that's part of opening up to the world and starting to move through it. So I'm the Clinical and Academic Director of CiiAT, as most of you know, and also of the Research and Publication Department of our school. And I'm very excited actually that Kate Colley has joined us today. Dr. Colley's been important for me as a mentor and in this book. So most of us have been online long before the COVID hit us in March of 2020, but that was kind of the marker when we began some of the research studies with our book. And we're really going to be discussing today some of the values and some of the challenges we've discovered about being online as clinicians. So this book, a little tiny synopsis for the participants here who have not read it yet. It's a practice and research-based exploration of virtual art therapy and how its innovations are breaking new ground in the mental health field. There are 17 chapters authored by leaders documenting their findings on art therapy online, several of whom are here with us today, and also with the findings from some research studies, including our own through the Virtual Art Therapy Clinic. It shows examples, strategies, and experiences delivered in arts-based therapeutic services. And it's really meant for not only art therapists, but clinicians who are interested in doing tactical and sensory-based work online. So I'm thrilled. Thank you all for being here. We're going to honor the time, and at 9:45 we'll wrap things up. And those of you who are audience members, feel free to put questions and comments in the chat, which we will moderate. And if they're not answered today because they may not be suitable for any of our particular authors, we'll make sure to answer those in Facebook over the coming weeks. So without further ado, I'm going to first pass it to Dr. Joe, my colleague and friend in Bangkok.
Hi, I'm Joe. Actually, my first name and my family name is very long, so I cut it short and make it just Joe. I live in Thailand, Bangkok, and I am running the school, sister school of CiiAT. It's called IPAT, International Program of Art Therapy in Thailand. And it's been 10 years now. And we are well received from the Thai people. And we are going to continue to do this work to produce more art therapists to serve the community in Thailand. During the COVID, I have opportunity to transform the classroom into online format. Are you here with me?
Yes, we're here.
Okay. And I have some opportunity. I got some opportunity from Michelle to share this experience of online classroom in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank you, Joe. Your chapter is quite interesting, and we look forward to hearing a little more in the questions. And let's pass it to Kathryn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm Kathryn Snyder here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have had a 20-year clinical career as an art therapist in this community after receiving my master's degree many moons ago. And 4 years ago, decided to embark on a PhD program since Drexel offers that, and thankfully I was accepted. I work under Dr. Garija Keimel in her research lab. She's my advisor on my dissertation. And I'm really interested. I've spent my career working mostly with children, teens, and their families, and within, a systems framework, considering, their schooling and their community, as well as their family and their individual needs. And I'm really interested in practice-based research. So my dissertation is focused on working with preschoolers in a high needs preschool here in Philadelphia and looking at the impact of art therapy on that program in relation to emergent literacy variables, including visual motor integration. My chapter reflects just really practice vignettes talking about a theoretical framework of translating child and systems work across the digital divide and the digital screen. I run a group practice here in Philadelphia, so it's not just me, but 5 other art therapists. And we had to quickly shift gears from our office and our studio-based space where we have all of our tools, and consider how to meet the needs of a wide range of children that we see, including children that were in very difficult family situations, experiencing a lot of other anxieties, and with really unique learning profiles and behavioral needs. So I really wanted to talk a little bit about some of the successes that we had, as well as some of the ways that the digital platform was less successful with some of the kids that we work with. So I talk about both of those constructs within my chapter.
Thanks a lot, Kathryn. And let's go to Nicky Shaw.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm here from Oliver, British Columbia in Canada, honouring the land of the Syilx people and the Okanagan people. And it was delightful to work on a chapter for this book. It's so exciting that it's here and it's out, and Jo has an actual copy in her hand, which is amazing. Thanks, Dr. Jo. And I was collaborating with CiiAT and Michelle on creating the first specialized expressive arts training program that had a niche and a focus on eco-art therapy and eco-art psychotherapy, and creating this program pre-pandemic of working outdoors in nature. And what does that entail? What does that include? What are all the dynamics and the facets of that in our own interior world and the exterior? And what was fascinating was, because of the pandemic, it caused us to create this program online, which is why it's incorporated into this book, and the nuances of shifting it to an online audience. And what did that bring up? What resonated well, and what were some of the challenges? That was really interesting. Myself, I am an art therapist, clinical art therapist, trained with CiiAT and IPAT. So it's an honor to have both of my role models and elders in the room. And yeah, my focus with nature and my interest and curiosity and the playfulness and all of that, the theory and the practice has led down this path right now into this book chapter. So I feel honored to be here and with all you guys for today's session.
Thank you, Nicky. And let's go to Dr. Pamela Whitaker, coming all the way from Europe with us today.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted that the book is published, and congratulations to you, Michelle, and to all the authors, and to all the support that you received from the staff team. So just to say that I'm currently in Ireland, and I work at the Belfast School of Art at Ulster University in Northern Ireland. I'm the course director for the MSc Art Therapy. And I guess environmental art therapy has been a theme within our course, but particularly walking or wayfaring. And this was an opportunity to write a chapter about that methodology of teaching practice, but also a methodology of clinical practice as well. And I think what was really exciting during lockdown was that we were all at home and sharing our landscapes, our homescapes, our territories of belonging. And we did this both on our course, but also our students took this forward and worked with their clients in a way of sharing photographs, spoken word performances, found objects found along the way. So the chapter that I contributed is called The Walking Studio. And I'll just share a few sentences from the chapter. A studio of walking is on the move and in between places. It is in the making, with other walking studio practitioners and multiple links. The walking studio considers each journey as a narrative structure. The composition of places is an inventory of interactions with habitats, people, situations, and the occurrences within localities. The walking studio includes the everywhere as the constant within a virtual pursuit of artistic wayfaring. It also networks within virtual surroundings that also link other places. So wherever you may be at any particular moment, you are always on your way somewhere else. So thank you so much for inviting me today.
It's kind of a new kind of wayfaring in this world. And yeah, well, Kate, would you like to say a few words? Or would you... We have a surprise guest with Dr. Colley today, but I just can't bypass her.
Well, what would you like me to say? Well, what I would like to say is it's very nice to meet some of the authors whose manuscripts I saw along the way, because Michelle invited me to advise and edit and help shape the book, which was a tremendous honor, privilege. And I slightly dread encountering some of the authors whose chapters I edited quite a lot. But I really enjoyed well, I'm trying to describe that the work I did on some of the chapters involved really trying to understand or to get in more deeply to what the author or authors were saying and get myself into their shoes and into their skin a little bit to try to showcase what was being said that was of such great importance. So, and the reason that I guess, Michelle, the reason I was asked was I started working on online therapy a long time ago in the 1990s. And I wrote all kinds of things back then about the promise, the potential of online art therapy. But back then, there really wasn't much chance for online art therapy to take hold. So I just thought, well, maybe, you know, who knows? But then when the pandemic, when COVID came, suddenly there was a need for the work that I and my colleagues had done all those years ago. And it was a very gratifying, glorious feeling to experience the reality of the things that we did theoretically way back then.
And you know, I think it also led to some very interesting discussions for me and learnings, talking with you about the various research that throughout the book. And one thing that we'll just never leave my memory is talking about the sense that when we're communicating, what are we trying to accomplish with the communication? And so if we're trying to have a conversation with our client, let's say, is it the discussion, and does it require video, or does the video distract us from the conversation? And I would say about what sitting here today, I'm noticing that those of you who are on video, I'm feeling closer to, especially those whom I haven't met before, because now I can place a visual with my recollection of what has developed in the relationship. Whereas with folks that I'm very familiar with, I could just as easily have a phone call with Nicky. I don't need to have a video with her. Because the importance of the conversation is what we're saying to each other. And I really valued that when we were talking about that.
Well, may I just add, just to clarify that, when I and my colleagues were working on online art therapy all those years ago, video was out of the question. So everything had to be done. We had to find clever ways to conduct art therapy online without video.
Yeah. Yeah, and you did find clever ways. And for those of us who are relatively new to the field, imagine having to fax artwork back and forth with your client and trying to be PAPITA compliant or HIPAA compliant. I mean, they had some bigger challenges. You know, I think this might be a nice place to ask Dr. Joe a bit about, I think hers was one of the few studies that really looked at the students giving feedback on the differences between having instructors face-to-face with them in their physical space and then having intensive classes online, like many of us in higher education here. So Dr. Joe, what are you thinking about as you hear Kate and I talking about this?
Yeah, it's a big challenge when Kate says that those days you don't have video, and I couldn't imagine how you did it. It's a lot easier these days that we have online live camera, and so we can see everybody's faces. And well, the survey that I did with the students at iPad still show that the online classroom cannot compete with the face-to-face experience. But there are some interesting points in the survey. Shows that the online experience can be more beneficial, like what you just said, Michelle, that we can, we can feel closer to the speaker online because the application, the computer program provide us with this tool, and we can see with the very high resolution of the camera and the quality of the sound, we can hear more and we can see more than in face-to-face in the studio space. That's the most exciting thing that I discovered, and I actually benefit from it a lot.
And that it's really, the proximity is quite different. I wouldn't normally be sitting this close to you, Dr. Joe. I wouldn't normally get to see, the features of your face as closely because it's not culturally acceptable. So there are some very unique features, and yet I'm seeing all of you sort of separately in little boxes. Would it be fair to say that sort of one of the key findings was that if we had to do a takeaway as an institution that our students need more water cooler time. They needed more time together over the lunch hours, eating and smelling each other and laughing with each other in unstructured time, which the virtual classroom hadn't been doing. And your students really noticed that a lot of learning happened for them in these before and after class times.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the sharing time, and then it's when the informal relationship happen, and they learn from each other. They get to know from each other more and more. That doesn't happen in online classroom, unfortunately, and that's a missing part. Has a big impact in the formation of the group in the classroom.
Yes, yes.
It's taking slower, a lot slower.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know, we're trying to find ways to give that relationship, that group formation in less structured ways. And I wonder if anyone has discovered anything that's been working for you. Maybe Pamela or Kathryn, I don't know, at your institutes, whether you've done some of that kind of work. So we're going to open it up to questions from the group, and I'm also going to sort of just bring this very basic question to you all about, you know, us as art therapists being able to offer our families and our clients and our students art materials pre-COVID, and that part of that was really quite gift giving and enhanced the beginning of the therapeutic relationship or the enhancement of our role as mentors, and that suddenly with COVID we didn't have that ability. And so that's sort of one of the questions I'd really like to talk about today. But Kathryn, I know you unmuted. You can speak to the prior question if you want.
Sure. Sorry, it took me a moment to really think about it.
Yeah.
I'll just resonate that I was in a PhD, I'm in a PhD program, and I was just about finished with my coursework when COVID hit. It made my last quarter a little challenging with that final 2 courses that I was in. But for those who were in the cohort behind me and had more course time and were gearing up for their competency proposals and presentations, I think that loss of connection to the community was much greater. So I just wanted to mention that, and finding those ways of connecting through Zoom meetings was important, and yet challenging. You didn't have all of that, just kind of incidental downtime. Mm-hmm. What I will say for my staff is that finding time for supervision and doing that through Zoom became easier, because we work with kids and tend to spend most of our working day between the hours of 2 and 8. It's hard for me to ask staff to come in earlier in the day or to find the right time for, you know, that meets everybody's needs. And so it's actually been just one of the benefits that we moved our supervision time online. We meet every Thursday morning between 9:30 and 11. And it's just so much easier for everyone to just lock into that time. And then because we're all, you know, well-established clinicians, we have our own art materials and space. I've talked to my staff and sent them with sketchbooks and watercolors and a variety of other tools to really kind of knit us together in some projects. But just having that ability across the city to meet at a regular time was really wonderful. So it is one of the benefits of moving our lives into this hybrid model.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm going to pass it to can I put you on the hot seat, Pamela? Are there some pieces of this conversation that you'd like to add to?
Well, one of the things is availability for students. I mean, we started to do a lot of supper clubs online, and a lot of client work didn't happen between 9 and 5. I mean, it could happen really early in the mornings and the evenings. And I think that was really useful for our course and training. And it also opened up a lot of opportunities to what I call jamming with other training programs in art therapy. And I know Michelle, CiiAT and Ulster University have had that opportunity. We've also had that link with New York University, and it really offers an opportunity to learn and to exchange practices. But I always feel that those are quite performative. We never know what's really going to happen with those jamming sessions internationally. So I'm just throwing that in, that virtual learning internationally has been really valuable. But to take up your point about gift giving of materials, what has happened for our course is I no longer want to buy art materials for the training, because the home studio and the studio is in community with the walking studio or environmental studios, has really given an opportunity to find the materials or the life materials where you're at, where they're at hand at home, or whether what you find in your communities of place that you belong to, or if you feel at odds with, or whatever. So I think that's been really, really interesting, that idea that we are supposed to supply the materials.
Yeah.
Art therapy. And I know this topic came up in discussion in the last Canadian Art Therapy Association conference, which was online, and I found it really, really thought-provoking.
Thank you. Yes. And, you know, I think it's pushed art therapists a little bit more out of their comfort zone than the clients often, you know, and the clients choosing their own media with the help of the art therapist. But then I think it's a little bit blowing apart the what is art media. And I know in our work together, Pamela, and with Nicky, the just using the phone to take digital images has been so integral and so exciting to me. And even little video clips, I wouldn't have thought myself that skilled or interested in video before COVID, but it has just been extremely dynamic, and I think it's just starting to be a tool that I use with clients. It helps me, I think, connect more, especially with teens who are really in this world of apps and things like that. Nicky, what are some of your thoughts about this topic?
I have various dialogues going off in my head as I'm listening to the conversation. So maybe I'll take a few of them. But one of them is that because we're intertwined with layers and bubbles of what's going on around us, this idea of what Pamela was saying of the found object, what's there already, what do you already need? The grass is not greener on the other side in terms of buying more acrylic, more paint, more fluid controlled media, what's already there. And by being in the nature and the outdoor studio so much, this trust of honoring what is there, and that is that day and that moment, what the client resonates with and finds their need and metaphors and value in that, whether it is a pleasant resonance or a resistance, what is that to work with, their feelings, that awkwardness, or the but the layer that goes above that is many of us are thinking about consumerism, and there's this huge wave in life in all different parts of the globe of just those bigger issues of consumerism and patriarchal and society, and just the fracking, especially in Canada, the fracking and the taking and the want and I find that the conversation about this material stuff in our practice has an echo and an avenue and crosses planes in other thought processes that are beyond just that bubble of working with clients. And they bring it in, or, you know, we as humans bring it in or out, and we have to navigate the health and the well-being of that, whether we go there or not, if the client goes there. So that's kind of one thought process from what Pamela was kind of saying just then. Like, often when we work outside, it's already there and it's enough, and we attune, we witness, we listen, we see. The senses tell us and guide us what's happening and what's next, and what's to be used or interacted with. I don't like the word used. What are the messages and the wisdom is being given to us through material. And one of my other thought processes was about the course that we run through CiiAT, and about how being online doesn't just give the immediacy of the moment for reflection, the impulse, the feeling, the gut reaction, the very now thought process, but it allows, I find, even more, because we give homeworks and because the students and participants are encouraged to do a mock session eventually outside, or to do a senses walk, or wayfaring and playing outdoors, and what does that bring? And because we bring back into the virtual, you know, platform these reflections, I find that the after now gut feeling, the 3 days later, the 7 days later, I find that it had a space for it more online than it did face to face, because they come again and want to have that gut what's going on right now. Not that, anyway, I'm babbling, and I'm a babbler, and that's okay. And so this idea of the thoughtfulness and mindfulness of the reflection of using the photography, like you were saying, and the video, and reflecting back, I think the participants go a bit deeper, because they only have their little faces, and then with the platform to encourage the sharing and the showing, it's got well, in the moment I thought this, but 3 days later I thought that. And I think that is something that has come up more through the virtual discoveries and interactions. That's what I got for you guys right now.
Thank you, Nicky. Yeah, there's so much. I was just thinking about working with younger folks, because there's this in our virtual art therapy clinic, we are seeing some children only with their parents, and it made me wonder, Kathryn, a little bit about some of your innovations in online work, and I was quite struck by needing to sometimes with parents needing to create more boundaries around the virtual work. Whereas I think with some of our students and high functioning adult clients, it's almost like creating less boundaries, because we're trying to create intimacy through far away with this video screen. And I wondered if you could say a few thoughts, because I know some of our audience members are working and learning about art therapy, and sometimes learning the hard way with little ones on the other side of the screen.
Yeah, I could also babble on and go down many
Feel
a
free.
hole. Right. So little ones require a little bit more hand-holding and setup from the adult world, which then creates this opportunity for parents, whether they are conscious of it or not, to be a little bit more intrusive in that space. And you know, they have a natural curiosity about what's happening. And of course, we want them to be involved in the lives of their children, but they sometimes, the boundary that's hard to help them establish is to allow more quiet, reflective, playful practices to just slowly emerge. They want to see things happen. They want their child to jump on screen and be engaged right away. And here are the art supplies if they've dutifully set them up for the child. And sometimes I could even hear them in the background when I would establish that they should, we've done a little bit of checking in and talking. Now you can leave the room and let me be in this, digital bubble with your child, and let things unfold. But I could hear them in the background if there was quiet, kind of listening in or chiming in and saying, is everything all right? Or are you doing what she's asking? And so it's taken a lot of dialogue to really get to a place where we can let that just kind of unfold. And even if the mark making or engagement with materials was not image formation, to allow the parents to also be okay with that what was unfolding was much more metaphoric and abstract, and that's fine. And I'm appreciating, this idea that the experience in the hour of therapy might start to look really different now that we're in the virtual world, and that there is a lot of carryover from that time and that moment, and what we hope to see, from beginning to the end of a session extends into later weeks and even into their day-to-day life. So I sent a lot of, or had parents purchase a lot of sketchbooks, which is part of my practice, but probably not a large part of my practice. I mostly work with loose paper or clay and other materials that are sort of, self-contained. And I talk a lot about, especially with my teenagers, about keeping a sketchbook that can be much more of a visual diary. But I think that happened more and more. And I did see that there was a lot of carryover into their day-to-day lives, being able to really use that and situate it in their context, their time and place. So I think I'm moving beyond your original question. But I do think that, to go back to it, certainly there were other times when it was challenging to get kids to be able to sit in front of the screen and engage with me and make art. And so sometimes we did need a little bit more support from the parents. So it's finding that right balance and really thinking about what that means in terms of the overall treatment goals anyway. And I think that it did force me to really question that, how much am I fully sharing with parents about how to let this process be more something that they engage in day to day. So if there's that boundary issue of parents wanting it to look a certain way or to be a completed image, how can I, in the moment, help them see that there is much more of an ongoing process of sensory manipulation and playing around with materials and getting confident with being a maker, more than having a finished image that we talk about. And so I think that really came up for me a lot, to be more explicit about that, where I thought I had been before. It really called that to mind, to really help to pull back and slow down the process and express that, this is the development of the child's ego, not just processing of a symbolic moment or completing a project. And so that was really helpful learning for me, to find that right balance between the strategic use of the parent and the parent-child relationship, but also allowing for the child to have their own time and place, because those metaphors weren't going to unfold if they were feeling the pressure of expectation or the anxiety of, we only have this amount of time and we are supposed to do it this way. So I think there was a lot of really rich learning there, and hopefully, more to be discovered and discussed.
Thank you. Fascinating. Yeah. And I would imagine that if and when you go back to some face-to-face sessions, that clarity and explicitness you will bring that with you.
Yeah. And we're moving into more live and in-person sessions. I'd say we've switched over to more than 50% live and in person again, with the caveat that when there's been an exposure in a classroom or in a family, we'll just move to online.
Yeah, and I think each population will be different moving forward, and will be fairly client-centered, with clinical practice around face-to-face versus online. Whereas I think in higher education, there's perhaps a little bit less at risk, or there are ways to bridge the gaps that Dr. Joe was talking about a little bit more thoroughly. So there's more hybrid happening. You know, we've got a few more minutes, and please jump in, any of the authors, but I'm curious about Therapeutic Alliance, and what would you say you've witnessed? What's the impact of the virtual platform with your Therapeutic Alliance, with either your students, if you're a teacher, or with your clients?
I'd like to share one thing. I think if we can enjoy the experience online, and that would transmit the feeling to the client or the student as well, especially teens who are very keen on the electronic devices, and I found them more. I found it easier to make alliance with the clients, the teen alliance clients, when I myself like to do video editing. I like to
Yes.
do graphic computer, and I share that with my clients. I support them in creating the artwork using the application, and the session becomes I don't want to say more enjoyable, but I can feel the feeling of the clients when they are more engaged in the process using this application online. And I think that's one thing that we can do if we can make ourselves enjoy it. Yeah.
Joe, I think that is a beautiful thought to end with, because I think our own enjoyment is pivotal to the success of this field, really. And a number of the chapters, Gretchen Miller's and Kate's, of course, and Sarah's research around what happens with technical comfort and glitches, and how we model that with our clients. Of course, that's sort of the small version of what you're saying, but as we all become more comfortable, we can kind of roll with it. Like, I have a backup plan in case my internet suddenly dies, and I won't stress so much about it the way I might have a year ago or 2 years ago. And I'm happy to be wearing comfortable pants, and there's this playfulness that we're all having now that we had no choice but I think it's also very much about the core of our enjoyment. Do we still feel like we're in relationship and having meaningful time? And as I mentioned earlier, for me, just being able to see and picture Pamela in Ireland in her cottage, which I think Sarah sent me a picture a few weeks ago when you had an address change, Pamela, and I got to see this picture of this cottage in the middle, and so now I can make up these stories in my head about what your place is like, and that these ways of making the best of what COVID brought us, but now taking it into the future and really being true to ourselves so that our clients can see that, so. Would anyone like to say anything else before Sarah unveils the winner of the raffle? Or anyone from the audience who'd like to ask a question or make a comment? This is your chance. Nicky.
I think the enjoyment aspect is huge, and one of the other things, my final thoughts was, somebody said earlier about, you know, the face and the attentiveness, and like we're all here on this screen, you know, at a particular distance, but it's, you know, I used to be a teacher for 17 years in a classroom with high school students, and a lot of that was relationship and subject mastery, but also and learning from them, but also classroom management and the dynamics of like, hey, little Johnny, why don't you see what Sarah's doing right now, and trying to engage and hook them back in. But on a digital screen, you kind of don't have to do that because everyone's so focused with the top half of their body when they're not making, or however you manage that. And so you've got this attention focus. And so it's not surprising to me that many of us have discovered that the unstructured time, the value of that unstructured meeting in between, the very focused, because our bodies are not scanning like the bird that just went across the window, or the light shining and dappling down over there. We're all like here on the screen. And so this idea of the unstructured and the structured time, and how to balance that too, for the processing and the feeling, that's what I've also taken away from this talk today.
Thank you, Nicky. Okay. I hope that you will all, audience and authors, be able to join us for the next 3 panels. The next one is in 2 weeks, and it's chock-a-block full with some wonderful authors, and continue this conversation then. But in the meanwhile, thank you all so much for giving us your time and energy. And again, congratulations on the book. And I'll pass it to Sarah. And who is the winner, Sarah? And how did you decide this? Is there some virtual game you've done that you are doing this little raffle?
For sure. So there's an app that you can use where I've entered in all the attendees, all their email addresses, and it does a really fun little spin the wheel game. So actually the winner of one of the copies of our book is Julie Chaplin. So
yay, Julie.
Yay, Julie. We will be in contact via email, and we will set up how we can deliver that to you.
Great.
Congratulations, and thank you to all the authors. It was a great discussion, and we're seeing that come up in the chat for sure.
Wonderful. And if any of the authors would like a copy of this recording, you can let us know at the office, and we might be able to manage it. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to meet everyone.
It's fantastic. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.